Well, hello everybody. I'm Pastor Steve and I'm here to talk to you about the book of Ephesians. However, before we get started, I want to tell you just a little story. I was coming in here today and I walked into the restroom, the men's room, and I looked up on the wall and there was a poster up there, and I want to share it with you because I believe in times like today, it really hits home. And it comes from Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. And it says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." Now, I don't know about you, but that's a comforting thought to keep that in my mind. I carry a cross in my pocket all the time, just not because it's a worship, but just sometimes you need to remember, Lord, it's all about you. It's really not about this money. It's all about you. So now that I have got off on another track, I'm going to bring us back into where we belong. And where that is at, we are in Ephesians chapter 6, and we're going to start at verse 1. But let me back up just a tad, because last week when we had this discussion, we were talking about being submissive and how important it was to follow directions and being submissive to one another. And I wanted to make sure I got that cleared up properly. When you're submissive to one another, it's not mass confusion and everybody's just falling down and says, okay, whatever you say. No, there is a hierarchy that we follow, and I listen to Pastor Bill and Pastor Avelino, and I do what I'm told. And it would be silly for me to argue. So this is going to go right into the first verse of chapter 6, where it says, "Children, obey your parents, because you belong to the Lord, for this is the right thing to do. Honor your father and your mother." Think about that. Children, obey your mother and your father. It's very important that we are taught, that we as parents teach our children and not be afraid to punish them, to correct them. The Bible says God disciplines those he loves. And I think it's very important that we remember to discipline our children. I'm not saying beat them and break their arms. I'm saying say, no, that is wrong. And here's what I believe is so important. I was listening to a talk the other day, and somebody said, that of the people who are in prison, the people who are getting beat up, the people who are robbing and rapists and so forth, nearly 70% of those men did not have a father in their home. Think about that. Now, there's a detail, and if you want to do a fact check on me, I'm sure you'll find I'm in the ballpark. Exactly, the exact numbers, I don't pay attention. It's a striking amount, how important a father is in the family. And it teaches the children as to what they should do and how they should live, teaching them godly ways. And if we don't correct them and we don't punish them, it's going to be pushed on. We're going to kick the can on down the road, and it's going to be the police who are correcting them and the police who are punishing them. And our children, we're going to find sitting in county jails and state prisons. And I'm being a little extreme and maybe overly dramatic, but as I look around about me and I listen to the news and I see what's going on, I'm thinking, children, listen to your fathers. Listen to the father that loves the Lord and is directing you in the right path, and how important it is. So, children, obey your parents because it is the right thing to do. Honor your father and your mothers, and this is the commandment, that the first commandment with a promise. If you honor your father and your mother, things will go well with you, and you will live a long life on this earth. Well, you might say, well, Stephen, that seems kind of silly, because some people do really well, honestly, and they've been killed at 22 years old one way or another. But they had a really good quality to life. The life is good. Remember, I like to think about it as with the Lord, a year could be as a second, or a second as a year. It's what we pack into our lives. How many times have I said to you, let's unpack this verse here and see what it says. It's a lot packed into it. And so I'm saying, children, honor your mother and father. It's the first commandment with a promise because you will receive a long, high-quality life. Think about that. And you have joy and you have peace. And after I'm getting this old, I think one of the best things I can have in my life every day is peace. Peace, not as the world gives, but the peace that comes from knowing the Lord. And how do you get to know the Lord? Is through the faith that you have in him. And for young people, to listen to their parents. Listen to your parents, God-fearing parents that are saying, I'm doing this because I love you. I care about you. Now, let's go a step further and say, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. Now, there's a lesson Steve Lutz needs to listen to. Do not promote your children to anger. It says, don't mistreat them. Don't bring them up till they're upset and they're angry all the time. Encourage them. You can discipline them. You can teach them without discouraging them. Trust me, it can be done. And it says, rather bring them up with discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. Now, that's a hard statement to expound upon because it's all there. Bring them up with discipline and instructions that come from the Lord. And that goes along with into the next statement here in verse 5. It says, slaves, obey your earthly masters with deep respect and fear. Let me say that one more time. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with deep respect and fear. Now you might say, Stephen, we don't have slaves anymore, buddy. Well, no, we don't. But we do have employers and we do have employees. And the same goes true in that relationship. Well, let me read it this way. Employees, obey your managers, your bosses, with deep respect and fear. Not because they're so much smarter than you, not because they know so much, because it's the position. It's like, Stephen, respect the presidency of the United States. You may not like this man, but he is the president of the United States and we need to respect him. We respect the position. Respect the position of your boss. He's the one that directs you. He's the one that guides you, and life will go so much smoother and so much better. In my cards, on my trucks, I have Colossians 3:23, and it says, whatever you do, do as though you're working for the Lord and not for man. That's the attitude that we need to produce when we are working for our boss. We say, hey, I am doing this not because you're watching me and you're looking at me. I'm doing this because I love the Lord and he's looking down at me. And what are the rules we learn? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. How important is that? Treat them well. Treat them the way you would want to be treated. If you were in his shoes, how would you want to be treated? So let me get back here. I'm going to try to put this. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with deep respect and fear. Serve them sincerely as you would serve Christ. Try to please them with all the time, not just when they are watching you. How important is that? You don't just say, uh-oh, here comes the boss. Let's get to work. And then, he's out the door. Let's get the cards back out. It's not the way you do it. You serve your boss like he is Christ that is watching you all the time. You do the very best you can do. I can't say it again. Do unto others if you have them do unto you. It's important. So try to please them all the time, not just when they are watching you. As slaves of Christ, do the will of God with all of your heart. And how many times did Paul say, I am a bondservant to Christ? I am Christ's bondservant. He's in effect admitting, I'm a slave to Jesus Christ. I do whatever he asks me to do, and I do it willingly. And that's where we need to be. We willingly do what the Lord asks us to do. I know I pray often, Lord, have your will in my life. Don't let me argue. Don't let me fight with you. Have your will in my life. And that's what Paul is saying here. Do what you can do with the best of your ability and do a good job, because Our reward is not today, it's eternity, and it's coming in that direction. So remember that. So let me read this again. As slaves of Christ, do the will of God with all of your heart. Work with enthusiasm, as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. Remember that the Lord will reward each one of us for the good we do, whether we are slaves or freemen. What does that mean? The Lord will reward each one of us for the deeds we do, whether we are slaves or freemen, whether we are employees or employers. We all answer to the same God. And he's looking down at us, and he is not a respecter of positions, he's a respecter of persons. Who you are. What does your heart say? Are you stealing time from your boss? He sees that. The boss may not. But he is looking at you and saying, your heart's in the right place, and that's what I'm looking for. And you ask for forgiveness, and he gives it to you. So let me go on to this, it looks like chapter 6, verse 9. It says, Masters, treat your slaves in the same way. Don't threaten them. Remember, you both have the same master in heaven, and he has no favorites. It's funny how I get ahead of myself, and I've already told you this in effect, but the truth of the matter is, the Lord is looking at us. He's saying, I respect you as a person. And as a person, I'm asking you as an employee to be your very best you can be. But that goes over to you as an employer. Be the very best you can be. Do not, and I repeat, do not threaten your employees. As he told slave masters, do not threaten your slaves. And as I was studying for this chapter, I did a little research, and I come across that in the day of Christ, slaves really were just property. If you didn't like it, you could throw them away. And the reason you didn't throw them away is because there's some value to them. If they didn't have any value, you could destroy them. And some of the leaders they were very cruel to slaves. And that's not the way to be, because we are all, if you were a king that was cruel to a slave, or you were a slave that was stealing from your owner. The Lord's looking at that and says, that's wrong. The same goes with employees and employers. You need to be the very best you can be, having honesty as the primary goal in your relationship with your employee-employer relationship. And Paul is reiterating that, but in the day, they didn't talk so much about employees and employers. They talked about slaves and masters. And I'm here to tell you that the Lord is looking at you and your relationship with your employee, your employers. And we went back to the fact your relationship with your wife and the husband and the children. All of these are important. And what it boils down to is you interact with them with love, with kindness, with generosity, and with honesty. And when you do that, the Lord is going to reward us in our time, in our place. Now, I thank you all very much for being with you. God loves you, and we love you, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend with me right now. God bless you.